Okay, I'm Denise Traffic Pointer. For those of you who don't know, I'm a volunteer with Sierra Club in Michigan, but I also do a lot of unfortunately helping communities like yours that have been impacted by toxics. I'm a chemical engineer, 42 years with DuPont. I will first say that, see, I'm going to put this in slideshow. Is that good? Still see it?
Yep.
That's better.
Okay. So I want to talk about, you talked about in your last meeting, I listened to the audio from, excuse me, from your last meeting, and you talked about the letter that you received from IEPA, and they're them telling you that they were going to do no further testing. So what I did was draft a letter with the help of Sonia Lunder, our senior toxics advisor. She hasn't been able to keep up with all the emails, so I put down the facts and the response, and she helped me make it flow. So she's very good with that. So I have to acknowledge her. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that letter said and what our counter argument is. Illinois EPA said that brownfield engineering results show no exceedances of regulatory standards off-site. And they're primarily talking about soil, surface soils, samples they took. I talked a little bit about how, they only sampled for 2 things and they went deeper than they should have and things like that. But we also see where they are misusing criteria that was developed for the Matheson and Hegler Superfund site. And I also want to we point out in the letter to them that Matheson playground manganese levels are very near the criteria. They're only 40 kilograms below criteria, which means if they moved over, 6 more inches, they might have had to been over criteria. So that's a concern, and we talk about that in the letter. I do have to mention that I got hit with a bad head cold about 2 days ago, out of nowhere. I don't usually get sick, so hopefully I won't fade on you. The other point that they made in their letter was that off-site sampling did not indicate water quality violations related to the fire. I only point out in the letter that the magnesium levels were slightly higher downriver from Carus, but that they sampled this pretty quickly after the fire. Metals aren't miscible. Most of them don't mix in water. They're going to fall to the bottom into the sediment. So later on you'll see where we recommend that they sample the sediment. The IDPH issued health interpretive letters to residents where wipe samples were collected. Remember, we were quite confused about the, the wipe sample and the purpose of it. I talked to Jamie, and from what we know, nobody received such a letter. So we say that in the letter and ask them to send one, because I would love to hear their explanation of the results. The letter also said that air monitoring by US EPA did not detect any substances at levels of concern. We also talked about this in the last meeting I was part of, where they didn't sample in all the locations I felt like they should have in one direction in particular, and that the averages were above criteria for a site, 35 micrograms per cubic meter. EPA data was not continuous. That's the answer that they came back with. And they used an OSHA standard for comparison. And I researched it, and Sonia researched it, and it doesn't make sense to use an OSHA standard, because people that work in a workplace, they're going to be wearing respirators, and the limit they're using is 2,500 micrograms per liter, and that's extremely high. You see it, if you had something that high. So we don't think it's appropriate. We say that in our letter back, and I'm going to show you some slides of some other data that we have. And I want to say too that This letter is, we're asking you how you want it to be sent. Do you want to send it? Who's going to send it? What kind of tone do you want in it? Brent has a copy of it, so I assume the council has a copy of it. So we're looking for that kind of input, or just you taking the letter and saying you're going to go with it. EPA can't speak to third-party results from furnace filters, so they didn't really want to address furnace filters at all. We say that the furnace filter results show that additional metals were in the particulate from the fire other than manganese and potassium. Results from the 17 filters in conjunction with the library particulate matter, 2.5, the small particulate, supports this premise and shows that Carus is a daily contributor to that particulate matter. I'm going to show you some slides, and I want to recognize LaSalle Public Library. They provided this data through Jamie, and that was very kind of them. They actually had it all set up. All I had to do was mess with it. They also made this chart, which is, busy. It goes from January through April 1st, but I marked where the fire was, and you can see the increase. But the next one, I did 3-hour averages of the same data, and I did a smaller set. I started on January 8th and went to the 15th, marked the fire in the middle, and it's easier to see the impact of the fire. I think it was 34 was the peak, but again, when I averaged that, it was 35. It was 47 micrograms per cubic meter. And then I did it, in 12-hour averages, because that's what the National Ambient Air Quality Standards use. And this is continuous data, so I used it in that way. I show where the fire is. And then when they started up phosphates, and as I say here on the side, they didn't start up full bore. From the sounds of it, it was a couple days a week, and it wasn't maybe one full shift, and then they ramped up slowly. And then Catalyst started up on February 17th, and you can clearly see we were at zero quite a bit here when they were down, but it's starting to climb back. And I'm certain when they're at full production, we'll be back where we were before the fire. So hopefully that's understandable to everybody. But what I'm saying is that knowing this, and what we know is it was in the filters, when you put that together, it kind of gives you a picture and a better supporting argument for this being for a lot of what we're seeing in filters being from Carus in their daily operations. So finally, the point in the Illinois EPA letter was that they don't believe that further testing is warranted, including indoor air quality that was talked about a bit. Brownfield, I think, proposed. So our counter argument to this is it's lengthy, but in short, the community has general concerns about the lack of consideration to cumulative health impacts. That's when it's cumulative for the different types of exposure, inhalation, dermal, ingestion, like kids with hands in the mouth, and especially for vulnerable populations, people with COPD, asthma, older populations, and the risk to children. Besides comparing each result to some criteria, cumulative impacts are something that needs to be considered by the responsible parties. Residual dust in home furnace duct systems and anything that was on surfaces inside the home will continue to cycle through the home heating and cooling system. And they're going to settle on surfaces in the home, including where children play. Children tend to play on the ground, and they're lower to the ground, so it really is a different kind of an exposure. And I went through several studies, and Sonia's quite up to date on this with manganese as well. The concerns, especially for children, is inhalation, and that chronic overexposure can lead to impairment and deficits in neurodevelopment and intellectual function issues. So that's pretty much our response to them and our argument that they really do need to do further sampling. Not all homes where the filters, this is my map, so I'm gonna tell you it's not pretty. It's something I do for all of my projects. I had to kind of show it off center because I wanted to show these houses in yellow. These were the higher impacted homes from the filter testing. Some of these in purple is what Brownfield did and probably soil samples. Carus is down here, but the other point I want to make, and it doesn't show it really great here, but we don't have samples from west and south of Carus, and we propose in our response that further filter samples are taken and that they're taken in the west and south of the facility. I have a link here to the map. I'm going to send this if the council wants it. Excuse me. I'm going to send this, and people can look at that map. You have to zoom in to it to see what you need to see. Excuse me, I gotta get a drink here. Okay. So finally, these are the recommendations, or no, this is key points to make to them and to recommend further sampling and action. So this is a list of actions that we laid out to them. Additional surface soil and furnace filters, samples south and west of Carus. Further delineation of levels of manganese in soil in Matheson Park in the playground where they found the higher levels. Because that's the other thing about cumulative, right? If your kids are exposed at home or you are exposed at home and then you go to this park and they're on the playground or whatever, that's another source of exposure. Surface wipe samples for manganese inside homes. Excuse me again. Is recommended and will provide additional information about ongoing, another drink, sorry, I really apologize.
Thank you, Denise, for doing this, even though you're feeling ill. Yeah. We do really appreciate it.
It's okay, I'm not used to being sick either, and I'm a big baby sometimes, but I'm all right. So we're recommending surface wipe samples for manganese inside homes, and preferably in homes that already had their furnace filters or their soil tested, that we have a full picture of their cumulative exposures. And then at least 2 background homes are recommended. And because of the water, like I mentioned, we're recommending, because the metals have probably settled, that they do sediment samples before and after Carus's outfall in a little per million. We recommend working with the LaSalle. Now, I don't know who, if you want us to do it, we can do it, but somebody should work with LaSalle Public Library and pull monthly data as Carus ramps up. I'm happy to compile that data, share it, and analyze it for you. So let me know on that one. And Mila and I have at least 2 contractors, unless she's found another. She mentioned she has one, and I've got one to recommend to do the work if that is what you decide to do. And I can put it together the scope of work so that you can hand it to the contractors to get bids. And I bring up the impending Carus air permit renewal again. This is important because as I was talking about the emissions that are coming daily from the site, I really believe we should push for them to have to put fence line monitors in for PM 2.5. That would be really important for ongoing. And it should be part of their air permit when they get a new one. So if the renewal comes up, there's going to be at least a 30-day public comment period, and keep an eye out for that. And I will also, but that's one of the things that we'll ask for. And that really is it. I put my email address up here in case you don't get your question answered tonight, or want to talk more to me about things.
Thank you for your time, Denise, we appreciate it.
It's okay.
Does the council have questions right now, or?
We're gonna get a copy of.
Yeah, I'm gonna copy the letter. Denise, I do think the letter should come from the to them, and I've expressed what I feel as a community development director, what is the community's interest right now in there being further testing. I can do that as a community development director. We have different staff heads that can send letters on their behalf of their departments, but we do not have a de facto health organization or health official that can vet and research this the way that you have. Given you've already put the time in, I do think that it should come from your organization if you have no issues with that.
Yes, Sonia makes the final decision, but she, like I said, she helped me write it, so I don't think there'll be a problem with that. And whether we put it on your letterhead, Mila, or national, we'll work that out.
Have you communicated with these organizations in the past on other projects, and how's that gone?
I have not personally. I sent a letter, I'm sure most of you saw, to several divisions of the EPA.
Right.
About just general concerns about Carus. But I have not spoke to anybody from Illinois EPA or US EPA that you're dealing with. I do have copies of emails and things where others have been contacting them,
Okay.
but I haven't.
Does the council have any other questions?
Yeah, if you could let us know those two preferred contractors that you had in mind, and then also give us a copy of the scope of work that you would like to draw up, so we can look at that to make sure we're doing everything right.
Yeah, I can have the scope of work and the name of my contractor to you by the end of the week. No problem.
I can do that as well. And Brent, I think you mentioned that there are other departments within the city that could write their own letter. What we have found is multiple voices really make an impact with different positions. And so if public health and, or streets and sands, the more voices that can communicate the nuances of why there are tensions, that really does hold a lot of weight. Also, in similar cases, we've done or presented town halls in which we have worked a bit as a liaison between the community and some of the agencies. And so we've been able to bring people out to get their questions answered. It takes a little time to put something like that together, but that also is a tool that we can use is a town hall, invite the state agencies and really facilitate the conversation about the community's concerns and what those agencies are doing between them to address it or to clarify their position on certain actions.
Are there other projects you've done where you were able to get those state organizations to a community to have a town hall?
Yes, so Cahokia Heights is still dealing with their flooding issues. We hosted a town hall and brought out Department of Natural Resources, Environmental Protection Agency. There were elected officials that participated in that as well or provided some comments. It took us about 3 months to coordinate and get people to participate. It was structured. The community did have an opportunity to create those questions. And it was both a pre-call with all of the agencies in the Sierra Club, as well as the formal town hall that was moderated by the Sierra Club to have that conversation.
You said, two questions. You said it was moderated. Did you organize that town hall? And then also, was there hesitation, was part of that time to coordinate, was it hesitation of people to participate in it at all, or?
It was hesitation by state representatives and mayors, mostly. State agencies were more than available to talk about money issues, any questions that people had. So there wasn't any pushback from the state agencies, but there was some difficulty with the local elected officials. The planning of it probably was the longest because we did have to give people time. We had to time it appropriately so that more people could engage. And it also was done in with the community being organized. And so there were stakeholders from various organizations that helped put it together. So maybe about 4 different stakeholders, which included community organizations. And so we basically kind of were like a handler. We don't like to tell the community what it is that they should do. We just kind of hold the space, provide, paint with broad brushstrokes what opportunities there are, and then help them make a decision on how it is they wish to have the conversation. And then what is the end goal? Is the goal to understand, to produce a white paper? Are you going to be using this to move forward with some policy things? And so it does take some convening of a working group to understand, why are we asking them questions? What are we gonna do with the answers?
Okay.
Hey Brent, with those 2 contractors you have, do we have any idea on how much the cost will be?
No, we don't have, we don't have any of that information. They were talking about was that.
Gotta come on the scope of work, right?
Yeah, we gotta get the scope of work first and then contact the contractors and get that ball
I
rolling.
just want, is there a ballpark? Or is it gonna be 80,000 again, or
No.
is it gonna be lower, or?
It won't be anywhere near 80,000 again, not from the people I've been talking to, no.
Well, we like that.
Yeah, like I said, I'll have it to you hopefully by midweek, but for sure by the end of the week, the scope of work and the name, and I'll get the contractor from Mila and send both of them.
Do you ladies have some time for folks that might have questions for you from our who's here with us today in the room?
Yes, as long as it's not 11 o'clock.
We agree.
I get up at 3:30 in the morning.
I just had a quick question. When is Carus's, what is it, their license for their air thing, when is that up, do you know?
It expires in December of this year. They probably, Illinois EPA probably already has a copy of their application,
Okay.
because it has to go in like within 12 to 18 months, so they probably already have it. Of course, things changed with the fire, so I'm sure they're in connection with the Air Quality Division to talk about startup and what they have to do in order to start up. But their actual permit, public notice probably won't come out till the end of the year.
Okay, where would we look for that public notice, just so that the citizens can be effective, hopefully, in that?
The Illinois EPA's website, all you have to do is look up public notice and it'll pop up.
Okay,
But make sure it's the Department of Air Quality. I think it's, just Air Quality Division.
all right, thank you.
Mila, it's Pat Walters. I had a question. When you were talking about having multiple groups present everything, so you were saying that if the letter gets presented not just from the Sierra Club, but the city together with the Sierra Club, maybe together with another city or additional organizations, that's more impactful. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, because you kind of went over that part quick, so I want to make sure we're against that.
Yes, so the very same thing for how we handle our water permits and air permits. And so, for example, let's say you receive an email saying, we invite you to provide public comment, and we give you a template, and all you have to do is put your name on it and sign it. If they get 300 of the exact same letters with 300 different signatures, they count it as one letter, right? Like, this is the way that they're like, well, whose voice is it if it's only one perspective? And so an approach to that is making sure that your unique perspective or community is represented with complete autonomy. So then they get to see, this is the transportation sector, these are the people with recreation, these are the small businesses that are being impacted, and it gives those permit writers a broader perspective on who cares about this issue. So we've learned that that's the best approach to leverage the collective voices by making sure that everyone has their facts straight, but the personal narrative and how it impacts the different communities is very, very clear. So we speak, from the perspective of a, conservation organization. And then we encourage the community to lift up their voices for their unique populations as well.
Thank you.
And I just mentioned that my part in it will be technical. I'll go through the permit and I already have, and say what we think needs to happen, and then it goes to Sierra Club Local and Sierra Club National to look at. And then we send it to you too, so you have points if you wanna strengthen the point, like the air monitors on the fence line, something like that. You'll see it too.
Can we also go after the water, land, and air altogether permits? To see if we can't tighten it all up?
I don't think that their water permit is up for renewal. And they're a small quantity generator, so they don't have any kind of waste permit or anything, but they do have a wastewater permit with the city. I can't think offhand what date it's due, but I think it's good for, one of them actually is close to expiring, so while you're talking, I'll look it up.
I have a question. We've been talking for a long time about this particular issue now. We've had you folks, we've had the EPA. Haven't heard anybody say anything about the county health department. Has anybody had any communication with them?
It's been my, I'm gonna stop anyone from saying it. It's been my experience through talking to them that they kind of run in line with the state health department. When I reach out to the county, generally I've been asked to talk to the state.
So they don't have anybody who follows up?
They have somebody answering questions, and they're getting more directive, I think, from the state than as a separate entity. I feel like any action we take should target the state health department. However, again, everybody's themselves individually considers both the county and the state health department, but in my experience through talking to this specific issue, I've been directed to the state.
I meant as far as,
They're basically giving the same answers as the state, that the state says there's no further need for testing, the counties agree with that.
But did they ever have anybody come out and check from their department?
We had county representatives go with us when we tested additional properties, but beyond that, I'm not sure what the county itself is. The county was a part of the original emergency response team. Thus, since then, I'm not sure what action they've taken.
Well, the more issues we have with this particular problem, it's gonna be he said, she said, and it's gonna be all the departments saying, but we made this decision, another department's gonna say, we made this decision, and it never, I haven't seen anything put together yet.
My name is Crystal Loughran, and I have the full report from the Illinois Department of Public Health, IDPH, that I would like to add to the minutes of the meeting.
Any highlights on that you'd like to share, or?
Yes,
Okay.
when the time's right, whoever would like this now.
I can take it.
I can do last name.
Loughran.
You know, you might just submit that at the time.
Well, that's up to you, I didn't want it, I mean, I could,
We'd like to hear it.
Well, now, anybody else have any questions, go for it.
Well, they might like to hear it
Yeah,
too.
I think they're gonna wanna hear comments from the public as well. I don't wanna speak for Denise, obviously, if she's not feeling well, I don't wanna keep her longer, but I expect that she'll wanna at least be staying in on this process.
No, I'm fine. I wanna hear what people have to say, so.
so, do you want me to share?
Roll with it.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Once again, my name is Crystal Loughran, the Illinois Department of Public Health. The city of LaSalle hired Brownfield Environmental Engineering, a third party, to do the testing. LaSalle County Health Department was there to verify the samples, and I have a highlighted report. The Illinois Department of Public Health, IDPH, has received the laboratory results of the soil samples collected from the residential properties and public parks in the city of LaSalle by Brownfield Environmental Engineering. At your request, IDPH has evaluated this data to determine if the results pose public hazard. We also reviewed fence line air sampling data that we requested from Carus Chemical from January 14th through February 9th. These are summarized here as well. Soil samples. IDPH screened the soil sampling results against regional background soil concentrations and health-based comparison values developed by the Agency of Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, ATSDR, to identify contaminants of concern. Results exceeding health-based comparison values were further evaluated with ATSDR's Public Health Assessment Site tool using the default residential scenario. Brownfield collected soil samples from 14 homes, the Northwest Elementary School, a daycare, 4 parks. Soil samples from 10 of these locations were evaluated for arsenic, cadmium, lead, magnesium, and zinc, all contaminants of concern associated with the Superfund site. With the exception of one home, none of the soil samples exceeded the ATSDR comparison values for arsenic, cadmium, lead, or zinc. Health effects related to these materials in soil would not be expected for any age group. And it gets pretty detailed here. And
If you don't want to read the whole thing, I didn't know if you had actual comments or opinions about it that you wanted to share with us.
Then I'll, just one more. The concentrations of arsenic, cadmium, and lead collected at one home exceeded their respective health-based comparison values in one or more sample locations. Magnesium also exceeded its background concentration in 2 sample locations. Cadmium exposed appears to be the driver at this home, and harmful effects are possible for children 6 years or younger with long-term daily exposure to cadmium in soil. This property should be cleaned up as part of the Superfund site, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, USEPA, project manager. It will be cleaned up this year, thus decreasing residential exposures. Air samples. The average level of magnesium detected in fence line samples collected from January 14th to February 9th was 0.56 micrograms per cubic meter. This level is about 60 times lower than the critical effect level the ATSDR used to derive its minimum risk level of 0.3. Therefore, the IDPH considers it unlikely that the community members would experience harmful effects due to breathing magnesium and dust.
That's the same report.
Yep, I read that one.
Yeah.
And where did, they requested Carus to provide fence line data?
Yeah,
Where did they get fence line data at?
I'm sure it's in this report, it's kind of detailed.
But I mean, the only air meter I know about is the one at the library.
and the ones they had in their cars when they were driving
Yeah,
around.
they had temporary ones and I just fired it.
Oh, the copy you have there, Brent has that copy of it all.
Yeah,
We have a copy.
Why they're smoking cigs.
report that I just received. So, and then I guess the question was, who hired this third party? This group to test the soil immediately after the incident? And why was Brownfield Environmental chosen? Was that something that we all voted on and said, this is the firm that, to be used, or? I'm just
The city
speaking for-
hired a third party, so we didn't have any kind of, partiality one way or the other. And this is a group that, our engineer knew of before and also did some other work. This person, that group did some other work in situations that had a chemical fire.
They had done work for the high school too.
Yes. Any
But they were just
questions?
considered as one resource so that the city would try and do something to address it. We said at the time, it wasn't guaranteed whether everyone would agree or not agree with whatever they came up with. But we tried to get, in using
But
Brian Brown's recommendation.
they had ties with Carus Chemical, that was the problem. That's the problem we had since the first day you even mentioned Brownfield. About their employee that worked for him for 8 years.
There was an
And
employee
there's,
worked for them. They said they
no,
kept
he
him on.
is still there,
Well, we
and they're
had-
saying he's biased. And then the man got a tour of the facility and is in every single email. MAC meeting. MAC meetings, what does that stand for?
Multi-agency group.
Thank you.
And he was actually, on the invite list, but as he was in the meeting, he was not Brad Brown, Brad Brown, was not at the, so he was on the invite list, but he was not on the call.
He's in a lot of emails that I've
He
read.
was on the invite list.
He's in a lot of emails I have read. Correspondences with EPA, with the city.
Right, the MAG group.
No, I have a lot more FOIAs than you think I have.
Well, that might be the case, but from what my understanding is, it was a MAG invite.
So I have a question. Denise, are you familiar with the report that Crystal was just, summarizing? Have you seen that?
No, no, I'm not, and I would love a copy if somebody doesn't mind sending it to me. It's interesting because I've had the feeling that Brownfield purposely has been testing homes in line with that Superfund site. They're comparing the results to the Superfund site criteria, just like in that letter. And manganese, you didn't mention manganese. You said magnesium,
Okay, then I
but it
mispronounced
doesn't sound like they tested for manganese.
Well, I'll go ahead and, hold on, let me stop you right there. The second round of testing, I personally hand selected the homes. So it was not from.
What made you choose them homes?
Just basically a random thing, and by people, with health issues, I chose Mr. Dias.
Now, everybody that's come out, I live out in Tomahawk Bluff, out north of town, and everybody we've had come out says it's the worst they've seen. We haven't seen anybody out there, nobody, and it's everywhere, on everything we
I
got.
heard it's bad out there.
I got an aluminum trailer at 8 holes in it,
Right.
so, it's,
Unfortunately, I just kept it in LaSalle.
so, I guess, are we gonna test more areas?
That's what we're doing.
That's
We're
what we're
listening
working
to
on?
them, they're gonna give us the scope of work,
Okay,
and then we're gonna go from there, because right now,
alright.
we don't know.
And probably
So,
seek further input from the EPA and get their input on the subject too, based on the additional input from Sierra Club. See if that moves the needle, as Brent had said at the last meeting.
The follow-up to the conversation we had at the last meeting, it's our desire right now, and it's our, Sierra Club has our support to send this letter to the EPA and the IDPH and share all the information that they have in the hopes that the Sierra Club can convey concerns that the city has been unable to at this time, that would then bring the EPA, Illinois Department of Public Health, back to the area and consider doing further testing.
Right, and when I did that, when I was selecting that testing, as you pointed out, Denise, we have a lot of the furnace filters from the same area. That's why I chose Northwest School, that's why I chose that daycare, because I thought those were important places, and they were away from all the other places we did testing.
No, all data is good data, we've got good data. I just think it was preferential, at least the first time they went too deep with their samples. But, I mean, the point is, in the scope of work, I'm going to stress that we need to randomly, or however you want to do it, choose locations south and west, because the winds on the evening of the 11th through the, I think, early in the 12th, were from the north, direct south. So we need to know how they're impacted down that direction. And the fact that we're seeing it at the library, they're kind of southwest, so and that'll just be important going forward.
Well, the other thing with the EPA, Many of you probably received a card from the EPA about your property. Last year it came, mine, because I live in the area, May 11th of last year. And the concern I have is I just got another call from a lady who had been working with the EPA for at least, since 2016. And the EPA now does not return her calls, and they haven't finished doing her property. I'm wondering how much of it that's still related not only to the fire, but how much of this still isn't done, and how much of the property that they tested, they're testing from the last thing and giving us a report instead of what's going on now. I mean, there's so many people with their hands in the pie here, can't seem to get everybody together on the same page. Yes, Pat.
So, having multiple studies at different levels, like I'm going back to how the county health department has responded, what they did, what they know, how the state has responded, all of those are fair. When we did a similar approach with asking questions for each agency, we literally worked with the community to outline the questions and kind of revise them and put them together for, like, these are the money questions, these are the health questions, these are the response questions. It's looking as though you all as a city would benefit from that type of approach and sending that to IEPA and getting direct responses to understand their legacy issues that we think might also be kind of impacting responses now. I do think that it's time for a strategy around asking IEPA specific questions. That would have to come from you all. I'd be more than happy to work with the city as well as community members on collecting those questions, revising them, organizing them, and using that also when we request additional testing for responses to these questions. And we can do that for each of the agencies. That's the type of pre-work that could go before an actual town hall. But it also can be a standalone for, we would like responses to these questions so we can move forward with making decisions on how we want to, organize, litigate, or communicate with the public.
Okay, two things. One is, I'd really like to see the city sign the letter in conjunction with the Sierra Club to show the city's commitment to the Sierra Club's findings. And second, I've been in contact with Rob Kondrecki, the site coordinator for Carus, and with Demery, I don't remember what her last name is, she's the M&H project manager. And between the two of them, because I live north and west of most of where they were testing, and I'm a good mile away from everybody else, but I still have the same heavy metals that Carus emits in its toxic inventory report. I'm saying, how is that possible? So they're kind of playing it off on each other. First I talked to Rob, and Rob says, well, that's from the M&H. And I'm like, well, how can a site that's from your home put these chemicals in my furnace? And if it is, it's in everybody's furnace, and why isn't the public informed that M&H is still emitting all of these toxic chemicals? But the chemical makeup isn't all of what M&H is. The chemical makeup is what Carus has from its toxic inventory report. So then I go to Demery, and she's like, no, that's, agency speak, and no particular answer. So I'm like, what is the level? What are the things, what is the level at which we should be screening out or, converting for, this is how much M&H emits? Shouldn't they know that by now? So Carus is sliding under the part where they're blaming M&H, and M&H is going, oh, well, this is just part of the cleanup, we're gonna clean that up, and that fits with what the rest of the agencies are doing, and that's really unacceptable. So if it's Carus, we need to isolate Carus. If it's M&H, we need to know that that site is still infecting and contaminating everybody. So
There's
that's
nothing
what I got.
operational in M&H right
No,
now.
it's not M&H,
So
they're
there should be
different, they're
nothing
different, they're different
spewing into the air
chemicals.
from there.
Yeah.
Denise, do you think that these yards, from the filter results that I've gotten from Dimmick, Oglesby, Peru, obviously Pat's house, and the residents around my area, do you think that's from an M&H Superfund site? Or
No, I don't,
would
and that's based on the PM 2.5 results that we were receiving when Carus wasn't operating. A lot of zeros. I mean, there
I noticed that.
levels of concern at all when they weren't operating.
I did notice that.
And my other question was, if my house is from M&H, then why don't we test a house at the west end of Peru? That should, oh no, then his other thing was that they were naturally occurring. Like you go outside, don't you? You have a cold air return, don't you? So if that's true, if they're naturally occurring, then a house at the west end of Peru should also be infected with all those chemicals, right? I mean, they haven't shown any indication of doing a control site, which I think is important. We need to test not just where it is, but we also should do some sampling where we know for sure it isn't, right?
It's true that it is naturally occurring, but it doesn't go airborne easily. I mean, usually it's from activity. There are numbers and background things that I can look up, but zinc happens to be one that we're finding everywhere at levels higher than I would have expected. Even in Pat's home and the one in Peru.
So I want to do a quick recap here, if I could, a little summary. We had the fire. It was recommended by the city to be impartial, to try to get a third party in here. And obviously, maybe being when chair quarterback, maybe that wasn't a good idea because we're getting ripped for that. But I think it was a good call, and we got the brownfield in here. Whether the results are what we wanted to hear or not, it was our effort. No other, Morris or the other place up north by Rockford didn't have a third party come in at all. They just basically walked away from it, from the residents. That was one good effort out of there on our part. We wanted to try to get someone else involved in this. These meetings right here, we're all kind of talking to the choir, right? We're all on the same page with this. We're with you. But until we get the attention of Carus, or until we get the attention of our state leaders that control the IEPA, and we had that for a little bit, this is not going to go anywhere. So, you know, we're hoping the Sierra Club, their findings, they're basically, that letter is going to make somebody, as we call it, move the meter a little bit. That says the IEPA, the US EPA, IDHP, come back and do some of this additional testing. But right now, we've been asking them, you know, to your point, you know, dial in and get those specific questions from them. We have been, and right, you know, we're saying, what would make you come back here? And they basically say that there's probably nothing, what they're telling us, to make them come back here.
Have you asked them yourself personally? And
Yes.
are you,
Brent has.
from what I have read that Brent is asking, it's always like, we need a letter to bullshit the residents is what I'm reading. Basically, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
That's your interpretation. But I did finally take it as correspondence, and it was very to the point from the Carus CEO today, Mr. Andy Johnson. And in there, he just basically said he'd like to meet to discuss some stuff and talk about their transparency, and potentially he even wrote in there about setting up a town hall. That's what we need. So I'm hoping we'll have something from that. And we meet on Wednesday. So I'll be glad to hopefully have some information from that.
I knew there was
Nice marching.
3 months late, it's okay, but at least these are the folks that we need to talk to. These are folks that need to say, hey, we'll pay for extra testing, right? Because it's going to come to a point where we're going to have to go to a vote to the council to say, you know, when do we have to stop this extra testing if it's not
But if you're not demanding the testing yourself, you're not saying, we stand beside, I got all the FOIAs.
All I'm saying
We
is
stand
that's
beside
not
our
that
residents.
We've done additional testing and shared them with that result of that testing. It hasn't been needed. The Sierra Club has some testing done. Here's another thing, like, there's some vaccines.
I got a letter right here that states that the health department's gonna go along with
I'm actually
with
talking now. This is
Brownfield.
one reason why some people don't wanna come back here. And there's people within your group that said they know that, but people don't wanna deal with people interrupting them.
Talk away.
You gotta talk, you gotta be respectful, let people have a point of view. Okay? Mark?
Hey, Jeff. I didn't intend to talk tonight, but you guys know I've sat where most of you are sitting. And from my involvement early on, I look at this as a twofold thing. One, what is the fallout of the damage from the fire? And two, what is potentially fallout or damage from regular emissions coming from Carus? So I think that's where the two areas of concern are. I give you guys a ton of credit. I wholeheartedly agree with you guys are on board. My question is then, how do you continue to push upward? Because I believe IEPA is never gonna wanna admit they didn't test for the right things, they fell short on what they did for everybody here. So until the pressure continues from the city, from the county, from the state, whatever. So one of my questions is, I look around, just wanna make sure I'm right in saying so, where are guys like Mike Castle? When I was here for 8 years, Mike would come and sit here on completely unimportant issues and give his time and give his input. Where is he for something that's this important? Where are our county board members? I messaged all of them, shared the Sierra Club's letter with all of them. I got zero response from any of them. I've emailed Mike a couple times since then. I tried calling him, his phone number doesn't work. Those are our elected officials. LaSalle's not only affected, but Dimmick, other areas, Ottawa potentially with the Lots warehouse now there. Where's the county in all of this? So I would be asking some of you too, ask them the same thing. Where are you guys at? Why don't you have our back? Lance and after some of those guys have gotten involved, and I give them credit for that as well. But from what I've seen in my own correspondence with them, a lot of the approach is, hey, here's some information, what did you guys at the IEPA think? So again, none of them are gonna say, they're right, we didn't do this correctly, or we didn't do enough. So until Lance, Sue Resin, and those guys start coming with a harder approach that says, we 100% back the need for more testing. We're not saying what you're gonna find, we're just saying, you absolutely need to come back here and do more testing, do a better job for these residents, and for the city of LaSalle. There's no reason it should fall on the city. It should not be on your dime to have this done. It should be on Carus, and it should be on IEPA, and we all know by now that Carus isn't gonna spend a damn penny. So, any way that we can help support you, vice versa, county, state, whatever, we're all here for you guys, you know, but, and we do appreciate Jordan, Bob, all you guys, Joe, that are now stepping up, truly do. And you know, I'm here for my brother, for Jimmy, for the people, but I've sat where you sat. And from the beginning, I said, give them time, let them get their arms around this. And Carus took advantage of that, unfortunately, to misdirect, misguide, mislead. And now it's time for them to be held accountable. Yeah, so.
Hey, Jim, I believe you, spoke with Lance a little bit about taking this to Springfield, hopefully this week.
Well, it was, that was, the focus of that was in regard to, claims that these.
That was a part of the insurance.
Yes,
Okay.
but that was a central thing, but I also asked him in general who would be a good representative of the Attorney General's office that we could interface with, because there are so many in that office. So I did reach out to him on that, and, you know, certainly when you're talking about the claims, we could reach out and say, you know, what about some of these other questions? But, you know, there are several aspects as Mr. Snyder indicated. But yes, we have reached out to him and others in regard to, trying to push this further.
Can I ask a question, please?
Jamie.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So my question is we know that M&H Park is now like almost completely contaminated again. Most of those roads have been replaced in our home too, and all of the grounders are redacted. So we already know that we're already in our home too. Like we even had our street replaced, we've had our sewer replaced. There's absolutely no reason why any of the ground near our home should have anything wrong with it except for the fire and the now that they're poisoning us daily. So what is really Carus's response for these high levels in our ground that's just been replaced? Or do they say, oh, Like, I really would like that answer to that question. If all of the grounds have been dug up in the last 2 years, all of the cement work has been replaced, like even everything in our yard has been replaced, but we're 75% contaminated, what's their answer?
And the song Shaggy, wasn't me.
And the thing is, how can it not be them, is what I'm saying. All of our ground is brand new, our street's brand new, the cement in our yard is brand new. There's not a response. And why isn't the newspaper saying that? Like, can't you say, this is brand new cement, brand new sewer, brand new everything, and there's no explanation for it to be contaminated?
Hey Denise, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Did you hear what, Ms. Vila, or I'm sorry, Ms. Battaglia had to say?
Yeah, I did,
About
yeah.
focusing on, that's another reason that it was selected around the Superfund site to do that testing, because a lot of them yards have been cleaned up. So we were looking at new soil too. So.
Right, that's telling when you were part of the cleanup, and Jamie, your house was too, right?
Yes.
We had the
Yeah,
results from
and
Brianna's
we're finding
pre-testing
it,
and then after.
yeah. And it's being found again in filters, on lawns, and in gardens, and in places that have already been cleaned up.
And
So that's coming, I really do believe it's coming from Carus and that we can prove it.
but my question is, why
Because
isn't the newspaper
the
helping us say that?
implications,
Why aren't we getting
The
mainstream media to say there was no contamination 18 months ago and now we're 75% contaminated, and the only thing near this home is a Carus chemical site? Not one newspaper, not one major media person has said this. What is the city doing to get that out there? Call Pam Beckman, call like CBS News Chicago, because there's no other explanation for it besides Carus.
Is your lawn, is it above the threshold?
It's 75%
So that's
contaminated.
why they're not gonna care if they're not above the threshold.
But they won't test it again unless we pay for it. So now in 3 months or 6 months, we're completely contaminated at the rate we're going.
And they don't care what the test comes back, because they don't hold that as their test.
Sir?
Yes, literally, me, her, all these people right here, we all live in the same area. All of our yards were just redone. We got a certificate of safety of how good our yard is now.
Yeah.
I live right next door to Jamie there too. You know, they said, oh, if we don't come and do your yard's contaminated. You know, you can't do anything with this property. Well, I didn't even want them to come do it in the first place, but I let them come in, they tore my entire yard, 72 by 300 feet long. You know, gutted 2 foot down, redid the whole thing, certificate of safety. What do we got now? You know, I mean, my truck's ruined, my car's ruined, my boat's ruined, all my lawn furniture's ruined. I was sick for better than 2 months. In my opinion, the plastic buckets that stuff was in burning over there, whatever it released, and plus all the chemicals. I mean, I had a headache so bad, I told my wife to up my life insurance policy because I was gonna die, I'm assuming, you know? And I just don't see any of that like being addressed at all.
We need
The
to
insurance
create the
people are
awareness
fighting
now.
with me on stuff that's simple, they should just be taking care of it. You shouldn't even have to ask twice, you know? It should be,
And that's-
yes, we will take care of that, that
It's
should
kinda
be
like,
it.
Mark, you bring up, there's 2 points to there, right? The initial fire and fallout, and how do we take care of those issues with the insurance and deal with that? And we're trying to work on it, and that's what I'm gonna talk about, both, too.
Well, I was out there in it
Is
when
that
it was
stuff, when I
falling,
talked to
you
Mr.
know?
Johnson, the CEO, was say, hey, what are you doing for the folks? 3 months. I mean, I know I talked to people in the insurance industry, it takes a little time, but let's start seeing some action.
Well, their
And then number 2 will be,
Facebook post.
how about the existing
Jeez.
stuff?
Their Facebook posts saying how they're committed to their neighbors. That's
Yeah,
what
they're committed. Let me address something. Neuro-linguistic programming. It's tentative training back in the 1990s for just that specific thing, and Carus is hired, and Inga is on the website giving a testimonial. Trusted crisis management advisors, reputation management, these are highlighted items. I had a nice long letter, but all of a sudden I got blown out of the water because Mr. Grove has an appointment on Wednesday, and we're obviously Open Meetings Act, we're finding out about it right now. And that was in my letter, a demand. We no longer do anything for Carus above an emergency response. If they want a semi-escorted, hire private security.
Thank you.
If they want us to come out for something, unless it's an emergency, sorry. You haven't done anything for the city of LaSalle to help our residents, and our residents are sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of it. On one plus note, take it for what it's worth, thanks to Lance Yednak, I believe, after talking to Mr. McFedrin today, they told me 4 to 6 weeks for your insurance complaints, and within 2 days, they're all filed. So for the 5 people that submitted those to me, now they have 21 days to respond. Just so you know, that's by the Department of Insurance standards. Nothing we can do about that, but they're gonna have to respond. So,
And anyone else that has claims, we encourage you to file them. Again,
It's very
If you
simple.
have an issue with filing it to the Department of Insurance, if you feel your claim is not being fairly administered.
but anyway,
Hey,
I'm
Bob,
sorry. Go ahead.
can you go ahead and explain that neurological thing?
The whole purpose of neuro-linguistic programming, 10% of this community hates Carus. Hates them. 10% of this community likes Carus because they're beholden, because of jobs and everything else. And 80% of this community could care less one way or the other. Neuro-linguistic programming is using the press, and that's why I brought it up, your press release. The press to control what people think about an issue. And they're paying a lot of money. And Inga, just so you don't think I'm fibbing, she's on their website. Beautiful picture.
Can we give them a beautiful picture of my yard and like?
I totally understand, but my point is, they're spending a lot of money. The mayor's gonna have a meeting. That's the first, I think that's huge. They won't even talk to
Yeah,
anybody,
we
they
had
can have a
nothing
meeting.
before, so.
What are they gonna tell us?
Well, my meeting's just to sit and have a meeting, I'm not gonna be there very long. 'Cause I don't need to be here at all, we all need to be here together.
I agree, and that was in here, that there's no reason for us to even talk to them anymore if they're not willing to have answers for questions.
But I wanna
And
get
bring
the
whoever
message
you
out,
want.
they reached out, he wants that meeting, so I'm gonna, hopefully it's in good faith, and hopefully we can come back out of that meeting and say, hey, we're gonna, and I'll tell them we can hopefully host it here, we can maybe host it at LP, I don't care where we host it, but we need to have a meeting for everybody.
And one other thing that I just confirmed, Carus currently owns the city of LaSalle for our losses at the fire, $57,352.65 since March.
Chump change.
Good neighbor, my behind.
Good luck.
You write the check. That's gone, that protected lives, that protected their business. They've ignored us. I'm sick of it. You all I know are sick of it, and everybody on the council is. They just don't voice it the same way I do. But it doesn't matter, they care, everybody cares up here. So don't ever think we don't. We've invested money in this, above and beyond, and we're perfectly willing to listen to Sierra Club's scope of work. Because if they owe us 57, I don't mind adding to the lawsuit another 20 grand for additional testing. I can live with that. The other aldermen have to make their own stand in regards to that. But we're gonna end up having to sue them, just like everybody else, because they're not doing what's right. And most of you know what I did for a living for 5 years. And the average claim in a lot of states has to be settled within 60. We're over 90. So in 26 other states, they'd be in violation of state law and they'd get whacked, but not in Illinois. Illinois is Illinois. I'm sorry I took enough of your time.
Yeah, I
Thank you, Bob.
appreciate what
Thank
the
you.
alderman just said, but I wanna amplify what Jamie said. Until the city of LaSalle speaks in its own voice, not, we're here for the residents, we're supporting the residents, we're asking for the residents, blah, blah, blah. When you say, as the city of LaSalle, we want you to do.
But I ran as elected official to speak for my constituents, so I am.
You
speaking.
never, yeah, well, but
So,
it's.
sorry, semantics, however you wanna do it, that is what I'm doing, that is speaking for the city of LaSalle, so we're doing it.
It seems
It's
at
not like I'm
arm's-
saying,
it
well,
seems like at
you
arm's
know,
length.
Johnny wants to do this, so what do we tell Johnny? No, we're speaking for you folks. That's our jobs.
But it's not just the residents, you're speaking
You're,
for
you're,
LaSalle,
you
you've
guys
got-
are affected too.
You've got the waterways, you've got the ecosystem, you've got the schools, you've got more than the affected residents that you're speaking for. You're speaking for the town of LaSalle. You have to uphold, you've got neighbors in Peru and Oglesby, you're speaking for them.
Well,
So you're not
to
just
Bob's
carrying,
point,
you're not just
10%,
carrying the water for the
10%
residents.
care a lot, 10% are probably don't care, and 80% probably don't care at all. So we're spending all our meetings, covering 100% of these meetings for maybe a smaller group than you think. And that's because we choose to.
And I could always ask the Sierra Club how many meetings they've attended.
The
We've
group,
been doing this every 2 weeks since that fire. And ask them how many cities are willing, these are town halls. We've invited everybody, I've now demanded. Again, what did my demand get from Carus when I wanted an insurance carrier? So we've tried, don't think we haven't tried. That's what's so frustrating, your anger out here, and I can't get through for you to understand that, boy, if I had my choices, but I can't. I have
Even
to
the
do what I
ladies,
have to do.
when the Sierra Club came, they were actually, correct me if I'm wrong, you were surprised that we invited you, a government entity, to a meeting, because we want to get their input. That's not common. Sometimes people think Sierra Club and government is like this. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to look for any resource we can get. And I think Mark knows that from his time with us. That's how we've always been. And you know, we try to get all information we can to come up with the best decision making. You know, and your point, Patty, I'm worried about Peru, I'm worried about Ozy. You know, they should only hear from Town Hall Bluff. Yeah, you know, but you know, they have representations there too, right? They need to go through those folks. We will be glad to help them, share our information we have for you to present to your elected officials, but, you know, no offense, my total goal is to take care of LaSalle. That's what our job is.
I think what
Jane
makes
Hicks.
this challenge, that for many people, this is a first time experience working with so many different agencies, as well as trying to trust an industrial neighbor who they've never had an issue with. And so there are some expectations for how it is that this should go, but this is exactly how most issues pan out. People stop talking. Our state elected officials are challenging to get a hold of and keep their attention. We have to educate them while they're learning about other pressing issues in our region. There's also, you know, who has supported who at various levels of government. Understanding how to work with the state agencies and the various departments. It can get complex. It is very frustrating. It's something that we deal with every single day. But I do want to say, of the municipalities that I've worked with, this has been the most inclusive, albeit challenging, stressful, very tense conversations, but you all keep coming back and doing it. I appreciate everybody that's reached out to the Sierra Club to continue to learn how to communicate, lobby, and organize. That is why we are here, because it's necessary to learn how to use all of the tools, social media, letters to the editor, how do you educate your elected officials at various levels of government, and that's why we're here. Please do not give up. We are not leaving. I would love to continue to support, but I do realize that other things are going to be coming up. And so next steps, we are still here. We have our recommendations for alternate third-party consultants that we've used over time, familiar to Illinois, as well as have relationships with other labs. Because that's been a point of tension in terms of conflict of interest. We've talked about working with academic partners for continued sampling to kind of alleviate some financial stress and think about securing funds to do a formal research project using a junior college as an anchor site. So this looks like it can develop into a longer term strategy to protect the city from other issues. Mayor, if there are opportunities, if you're like, all right, you need some help before you go into the meeting with Carus and you want to work through some of the questions or need some support, we'd be more than happy to ghostwrite a little bit for you, encourage you, empower you with some hard-hitting, direct questions that maybe you yourself are uncomfortable kind of composing, so we can definitely do that. I do think that having a voice for accurate information is important, and so I haven't been following the municipal website, but to your point about the media, when you do not have a campaign or a way to communicate what is happening in the meetings, whose voice is being lifted up, then everyone who's reading about this issue, when they Google it, they're only reading what reporters, journalists, and third-party people are saying in their interpretation of it. And so I would strongly recommend, if there are, press releases or summations about next steps, that the city be very clear on what it is that they're doing. So when people look for that information, your voice is not being interpreted by a reporter.
Good.
Thank you. Jamie, you've been very good, patient, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Al, I need to take off.
All right.
Hey,
That's fine.
thank you ladies so much. Appreciate your time.
Well, just let everybody to know that they can email me, and if any questions come up after I sign off, just let me know.
Thank you.
And I'll give you the scope of work, and I did look, the NPDES permit, their discharge permit to go to the river, and they did get a temporary construction permit recently, but the permit that they're living on right now is from 2018. And it's been extended by the state. It's not their fault, but sooner or later they're gonna be getting a new NPDES permit probably, so. All right, good to meet you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
I was gonna ask her,
Call her tomorrow.
how many had the opportunity that I had the Sierra Club come to be involved in something in their neighborhood? I don't think many get that opportunity. I think we're fortunate that we've gotten that from them. I think we're very fortunate that they've helped us this far in trying to open people's eyes up to what's going on. Another thing is did the EPA, Illinois EPA, ever think I was gonna FOIA them as quick as I did? Because I don't think they did. Because in the emails, they're all scrambling. Jamie Hicks FOIA'd us. I don't think they ever had a guy do this before, to be honest with you. And
We're doing a lot of practice now.
everybody's scrambling. You're damn right. And everybody's scrambling. And they have been from the get. And the thing that I don't get is I'm trying not to connect the dots with the city and Carus, but when I read stuff like this is an update, and it's from a MAC meeting, a multi-agency MAC meeting, and it just says it says about the new updates of the 6 interior and exterior, that straw vote we had, and then it goes on to LaSalle County EMA Health. It says Illinois Department of Health still hasn't received anything about the filters. Illinois Department of Health is willing to go along with the sampling, city sampling. What do you mean by willing to go along with?
It's hard to go back to each exact meeting, but in that regard, I think we were talking about that the Sierra Club had done furnace filter testing, and I had asked them if they had received it yet, because I think it was our prerogative that they should.
I
receive
recall
those
the filters,
testing.
right, but
They agreed with the city's test at that point that, I don't know exactly what test.
well,
was
I'm
referred
getting
to.
the transcripts of this,
Right,
all of
that-
this.
that's
so
a no page of a
I'm
verbal.
gonna get all the rest of it, it's
Yeah.
coming.
Well, okay.
So I'm gonna know what was said in all these MAC meetings,
Okay.
and I'm gonna know who was in them.
At that point, you'll probably have a more verbatim.
I hope I
conversation
do.
than I will.
Because
However, my
I'm really
understanding was-
confused at some of the things that I'm reading in the cover sheets. It started with the EPA, the Illinois EPA. They didn't get here. It's proven that the test didn't meet their criteria that they're claiming the furnace filters never met. I don't understand how people can't see that when the facts are right there. I've been putting facts out every day. The paperwork does not lie. It says what it says. So how they're interpreting it, I have no idea. But
And who are we even asking to interpret it?
The people who did the test is trying to convince us we don't need no more tests no more. Illinois Department of Health. Is he really looking at this stuff? Because when they called me about when I was exposed, they said, oh, you better call Jamie Hicks. So they told the Department of Health, they didn't do it on themselves. They got told to by somebody to give me a call and tell me I should probably go to the hospital. About 3 or 4 days late, but it's still a call. And then they got the report. When I got the FOIA report on the test and the test they did, it said, they called me up, they told me that, oh, we don't have the house numbers, so we don't know where the tests go, we can't even read it, trying to blow me off, and I blew it up, and next thing you know, I got house numbers of what they sampled. There's a whole bunch of stuff being like really shady, and how you guys can't see
get all that
that?
information, but what good is it to be if nobody's paying attention to it, my point?
My question
Those are the people who are sharing it to you, who are the ones that are supposed to be looking for it.
Sharing it, I'm getting it, the FOIAs, and I'm sharing it with people, and I'm sharing it with the people you're telling me to share it with, and they don't give a shit.
Well, that's my concern, we need to have somebody that's willing to say, hey,
And
we made a mistake.
everything that
We made a
Brent,
mistake, let's go back and check it.
everything
You're
that
right, so we don't wanna do
Brent
that.
does, I do appreciate what he does. I know he's put in a tough situation, but some of the things in there, it's going along with the flow. And it's easy to go along with the flow. It's not easy to go against the flow. And that's all I want to say about that. I mean, there's things that could be said. He does a phenomenal job. I give you all the credit in the world. I really do. I would not want to be in your shoes though. You've taken on a load. But don't go with the flow. What you did the other day with the protest, that's not going against, that's going
No,
against
but-
the flow.
Well, we did it.
And that's what I appreciate
Wait,
that.
We were talking about what we wanted to do, right? And now we're right getting a little, that's the first time we ever really talked to Carus as a group.
But you gotta
So we have a meeting
understand.
now with the CL, so we need to make sure we get that information to them and get a response.
But I like what you said about not having a very long conversation with them.
No, I have
Because
no-
it shouldn't be, because then it's gonna,
Especially here, you thinking
it'll
we have some
look,
kind of cahoots with Carus.
it'll look like it'll look like a PR move, I'm just saying. You don't really want it to look that way.
But I'm just saying, I'm gonna be respectful, I'm gonna hopefully he'll be respectful back to me, and I'm gonna say, these things you wanna talk about now, let's talk with them. Well, I'm gonna ask a favor, you being a leader, Mark being a leader, Marty being a leader out here, Pat, I'm gonna be confident we're gonna have this meeting, we all have to be respectful. And we gotta come with facts, experiences, and information, not personal attacks, I want this job, this guy, you're the
I know what
worst
you're
person.
saying.
But
I'm
because
growing along
we're gonna
my
We're gonna
path.
get more with people, you call it going flow, I call it being respectful, call it being professional, and you can still get your point across in those ways.
But when something's not right in your gut and you know it's not right and you don't voice your opinion,
You can still voice
I
your
mean, I'm sorry, I was built and raised a different way, I guess, because I don't flow that way. I don't. This has been wrong since the first press release. You could see it in the person. It was a con the people. And they used you guys. I honestly think they used you as part of their little ploy. I really do.
WGLC
I really
called
do.
them purple spots. You didn't call them purple spots. The WGLC had a neuro-linguistic, is that what you said, Bob?
Yes.
Yes, they had a neuro-linguistic moment after your interview with them, which was really good. But what they advertised on their news and what they published on their site was the residents are concerned about purple spots on their stuff. So where did that purple spots come from? So that's the kind of thing that Jamie, I believe, is saying doesn't add up to people, because you've never called it purple spots. Everybody over here
Nobody's.
knows serious damage, and yet neurolinguistically, that's what the media said, purple spots.
Well, I've heard people say it's colored stuff, I mean, they're.
I had one more
colors,
question
discolored,
too,
Pink,
if I
purple.
could.
Well, yeah, but not, I mean, purple spots.
And
in
people
a-
wanna know what is that stuff?
Yeah, purple spots in a way that, like, oh, the residents are making a big deal over purple spots.
See, I didn't take it that way, I think, why do we have this here, what is it, is it dangerous, that's what I think.
Do you know, Pat, about a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, we had a little discussion outside the room. One of the things I mentioned to you, see, we go round and round and round every 2 weeks about the same issues, about the same problem. Now, if you remember correctly, one of the suggestions I made, is that you all get together, get yourself a committee who are really gonna represent you, not the whole bunch. Everybody's got their own issue, and you need to get them all facts, because if you ever take it to court without your facts, you've got nothing.
We got nothing right now. We got nothing right
I think
now.
they're working together.
Yeah,
Eric,
you-
Honestly.
You told me to go do air monitoring on my own. I found out that every year the EPA has big bucks that they give out for air monitors, so all we need is somebody that's gonna run.
They only cost $300.
I'm just saying, get all the stuff that you're telling us together. And,
That's what you have in the letter from, the
Sierra Club. We're gonna get all that.
young lady behind Jamie.
Yeah, we have to leave. He's gotta get up early for work. But anyway, I did wanna bring up, there is another, I forget what Jamie called it, conflict of interest with Carus, because they were the market development manager from February, my phone's not bright up here, February 2010 to November 2017. 7 years, 10 months. Peru, Illinois. It's right here.
What was her role?
What was the role?
Market development manager
For where, for what?
for Brownfield.
Oh.
Carus.
Could you provide what you just read so that I can find
She
it?
can get it to me.
Yeah,
So they
give it
can-
to Jamie.
I'll give it to
Yeah,
Jamie.
you can get it to me.
Yes.
Good timing.
Good job.
John's been patiently waiting back there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, bud. I appreciate it again. Dragging it all around town.
Jeff, when are we gonna start using, like, what we need is like a better data collection than what we're doing right now. Like, we do have a lot of information that Jamie has, and on the residents that are affected. And I know that you're saying because our house is only 75% affected, but a year from now when it is, and we can't tie it back to Carus, we're gonna have a bigger problem, and we're in the same boat we were. So when we have to dig up the park so our kids can play baseball, we need to have some kind of plan so that we have starting points and things like that, so we have this data collected. And if-
How long has it been since our yards were done? A year?
Yeah, a year and a
Yeah,
half.
so,
With the certificate of safety and approved?
but I think that's what the data we need is, like,
Come on.
so, like,
Bring it in.
so like, no,
That's what we got.
but Porter Street was finished this date, the city did
Why is it
the road
contaminated
this
at all?
date,
But
and this is
we
where we
have,
started.
when we have all the testing results, we have that data, right? That's gonna be our baseline.
But do we have that baseline for like 15 or 20 or 30 or 50 houses?
Whatever homes we tested.
Okay, so we have a decent map so that you have something good to take to care of and say, okay, we redid this yard just a year ago, you redid this park a year ago, we redid this road a year ago. Like, so you have data to say there's not a reason for it not to be there, is what I'm saying.
there are people who haven't got their yards done from the first project way back, and the thing is, that now they're not, EPA is not answering the phone.
Oh.
I'm actually doing that, and I have a
And is the EPA sharing that with you as a city and saying, okay, these are the houses we haven't done, this is the stuff that's affected by the fire? I mean, so we have some kind of data collection versus just saying, our yard's ruined, we actually have data collection as a evidence years from now, not just today or not just to have a conversation, but we're gonna need data years from now to say, now it's time to clean it up.
You wanna look at everything realistically? We can't get them to finish the building on bursting drainage.
Yeah,
That's another
What
problem.
chance do you people think you got?
None.
They ain't
Well, we're
gonna do
gonna
nothing.
find out, I guess.
Not totally true, not totely true.
Get some
Don't
out
you
of that.
ever give
Nah,
up.
I'm not giving up. But I'm just saying, we're fighting for.
Punitive damages are heck to pay. All right, Dawn.
I guess, actually, this question's for Dr. Marshall. Can you hear me okay? Okay, it's Dawn Hicks, by the way. I wanted to ask you, since you are a proclaimed aquaholic, non-potable water. So I actually got messaged early yesterday morning that Carus Chemicals, one of their, I guess, rainwater catchers or whatever it is, was actually spewing out.
They release it. I have a video of them.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like Niagara Falls. It was coming out so much. And when I just did a quick thing, because I honestly didn't even know what non-potable water was, it says that it is not suitable for drinking and can cause health problems. But yet there was nothing catching it whatsoever. It was literally just pouring out underneath their fence onto the public streets. And there's 3 sewers that are aligned with the road that could not even handle the flow, and it started actually puddling a few blocks down from the.
Are you talking about the water tank right in front of the plant?
Yeah, the non-potable one. Is that a
that-
common occurrence?
That, it is a very common occurrence because our pump station pumps some city water right into there. It's not treated as potable water with fluoride and some other minerals, but it does Patrick, am I right, it does have chlorine in it. It does have chlorine in it, which is, by the way, not supposed to go down the city drain.
That's
There
what
you
I
go.
thought. That's kind of where I was going with that, but I also wanted to ask her
Right.
concerns for wildlife and obviously when it's
It's not a
puddling.
rainwater catcher, it's actual
Well, I
tank that
actually
we
called
pump into.
LaSalle PD's non-emergency line, because I really wasn't sure.
That can't go through the what, wastewater?
No,
Why can't it go through the wastewater?
Huh?
Why can't that go through the wastewater?
Chlorine, you're not supposed to dump large amounts of chlorine.
Well, no, not large amounts, but.
It's a very minimal amount.
Yeah, I'm just saying. You're not-
Minimal, like, per gallon of
So
water?
just so you guys know, the
or-
pump station, we have water that goes for drinking, we have a direct line, and Jamie's asking about this, we have a direct line that goes to Carus. It's not treated with the same chemicals as the drinking water is, obviously, right, because they don't need all that, and we don't wanna pay for the extra chemicals, we don't need to.
Right.
But it still has some stuff where, it's not gonna hurt if it goes in our drains.
I would have, me personally, I would
But-
have
but-
concern about that.
but to
I
be
just
clear,
wanted to
this-
open it and read the load of flows for the, the water on it. Allow them to tank it full, we have.
Well, and I know the officer did know, not that I expected, that's not his training, I get that.
Generally, we have an alarm at our at our water treatment plant to let us know, level of that tank, so.
Cause he said, he
It
thought it was
happens
like
more.
rain, and he said that, an officer higher ranking had said it's even been worse than that before. But obviously, we didn't get as much rain as what came out of that.
She was trying to respond, because you were asking her.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dr. Marshall, go ahead.
Well, I was just wanting to be clear, so this water hasn't been used in any way, like it's municipal water that goes back, like it's leaking out? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, it's just a supply, it's a supply tank.
Oh, okay.
And they supply it, so they have the pressure, they use a lot of water, so they need water.
Right, I was just trying to see like where the leak happens before Carus.
It comes right out of the top of the,
I mean, I can
It's-
show you.
It's more for cooling, it's not really to make the product.
Got it.
But did they test that water just to make sure every once in a while that it's okay when it gets spewed out?
That water gets tested.
yeah, that's supplied by the city. They,
Before, but once it comes out of that tank?
It's coming out of the overflow, it's not coming out of the discharge of it. Like the water that's going out the overflow is the fresh water from our pump station.
That's what I was trying to get at. It hasn't moved through any processing at the factory or industry level to be discharged.
I've not seen it, but that'd be
Yeah.
a great, good question, 'cause I've not seen that happen.
Yeah, it was something, that's for sure.
But just to make sure, since Carus has lied to us so many times, has someone double checked that they're not doing something with that water before they take it back out?
True
That's a
that.
great question. I mean, 'cause we can't trust,
That
we
water's
can't
not,
trust.
that water's like an overflow, it's under pressure. So it's coming out the top, it hasn't been utilized for anything, it's coming out the top.
Well, that's what they tell us.
No, that's what's happened.
So someone's seen that recently.
It was yesterday morning.
No, someone's seen their process and what they use with that water with their own eyes, not what they told us.
That's how the water's just pumped in and it comes, just like if something sticks at the water tank here, there's an opening at the top, that water would come out the top of the
Right,
tank.
and I completely understand how the function should work and how it's supposed to work in a normal situation. But everything that we've learned in the last 3 months, haven't we already learned that we cannot believe what they tell us?
I do believe they have a backflow system right in their building there next to the tank. It should be a backflow system, so their line cannot come back into there.
I would just say, let's just make sure that they're doing what they're telling us they're doing with the water that we're giving them. Because we can't trust anything they tell us anymore, can we? And then if that water's just going into our sewer, into our drains, I would say let's make sure that they're doing what they should be doing.
We have a lot of those things.
Hey, they pay for it. If they wanna rush it down the drain, good for them.
No,
Well, but if it's toxic or something, or it's gonna cause health issues for animals or people who come in contact, that's the only thing I was worried about, that's why
I
I went
wouldn't.
to ask.
Me personally, I'm not an expert, but me personally, I wouldn't worry about that. There's way bigger things to worry about than that.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall, by the way.
And did you guys have a meeting about the Apollo that still has the whole limit and the building inspector? Because I haven't heard anything back on that.
It's been inspected 3 times, but nobody from the city here. No
We are
reports.
setting up the current email as of Friday, still working to get, which one we want to have. We're going to inspect it and bring our own structural engineer. So we're
Because
trying to work on
Carus claimed it's been inspected 3 times already.
No, that's fine. We want our own.
And I'm like, okay.
Lisa.
Hi, I have a question for Dr. Marshall. It's a health-related question. You know, many of my neighbors haven't been feeling well, and I have a son that's 14 years old. Everybody here pretty much knows the situation. When the EPA first did the Superfund site, and they found out my son only has 1 kidney, they did our yard, the very, very first yard. They didn't even wait until the next year, because the chemicals can be so harmful to kidneys. Okay, yard done, hence this fire. My son comes up with a case of pneumonia out of nowhere, fluid around his lungs, which may or may not have been a result of this fire. Very sick in a major city hospital for 15 days, very sick. Numerous medications, would not touch it. He still has fluid around his lungs. And again, I know other neighbors and things haven't felt well. I'm afraid to even have my son outside. He still has this fluid around his lungs. The hospitals, we talked to this Illinois State Department of Public Health, whatever it is. This is before he got sick. We were just questioning about the safety with him and other people, elderly people, etc., and him with this 1 kidney. And pretty much nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows how to test for this. I just want some reassurance that my son is going to be safe. And hearing what Denise was saying earlier and showing that graph, I was almost in tears, because that is pretty much showing me every damn day outside, anywhere in this area is not safe for people to be, let alone somebody with 1 kidney, let alone somebody with fluid still around their lungs, elderly people. We have veterans home, people out walking their dogs, a lady with a daycare. I mean, to me, that should be a #1 thing that needs to be addressed and answered. I don't know by who, but it should be. That, the money, the disgust, the aggression, everything else, but the people's safety. Who do we even go to? How do I know if my son's collecting this potassium permanganate and it's not allowing the fluid to release from his lungs? I mean, he was near death. He was extremely ill. I mean, I'm just trying to make a point. I mean, you get the runaround from everybody, and you never know who to trust. Like, the one alderman says, this one says this one says that. Who do you believe? That's huge.
But
And
your
my
point-
son's not the only one, there's other people that are ill.
Yes, John, that's the thing that scares me is, and you know, we're not chemists, we're not doctors up here, but when professionals, and you're talking out of a pretty respected hospital, don't know, right? That's the scary part to me is who does know?
Went to Mayo Clinic too. They're still having issues figuring it out.
But like, do you feel, your opinion, I know opinions are hard, but how can they get reassurance that it's okay? When I went to the doctor with him the other day and they said the fluid is hardly diminished, that really has me scared. I don't like that.
So, I heard about your son, the very first conversation I had. Jamie lifted your family up. I met your husband. He let me know how your son was doing. And reassurance. All of this is hard. My experience with factories and industry is anchored in a much more urban setting. We live in a state where we have made agreements with factories and with industrial neighbors for tax resources and jobs with a very weak state agency oversight. Multiple sectors are getting away with contaminating air, land, and water around the state. It is so important that we, the people who work, live, and play here, do not allow factories and these businesses and industries to use our bodies as filters. It requires organizing. It requires everybody to be diligent in learning, which includes our medical community, because that is unacceptable that you don't know environmental harms that our bodies are experiencing. And when we go to the people who are supposed to be creating policies to help us, they don't understand. And when we go to our medical community, they don't understand. This is what we deal with, is constantly educating people. Whether it is reducing emissions through requiring factories to use better technologies, if it is using rezoning to remove pollutant industries from residential areas. It also includes analyzing the air with some consistency so you can see what is going on, as well as understanding who has permits to emit what, and making sure that they're not violating the permits, or if they are violating, making sure they pay the highest penalties. We have work to do, even though we figured, well, we vote people in office, everything should work smoothly, and it doesn't. The reassurance comes when we close factories down, or when they show us with data that they are not causing harm. And it's a collective conversation. It isn't people trying to evade accountability. No one wants bad press. No one wants to lose income. Everybody wants to protect their brand. But it's so important that we get on the same page for this is a longer fight. And this isn't to sensationalize anything, but Illinois is going to be having hotter days. We will have 100+ degree days where air quality will be compromised just in and of itself. Coupling that with factories or businesses that are not being best actors is a problem. So it's my hopes that, we can get a clear understanding of the emissions that this community is experiencing and who is contributing to it. Understand the local municipal ordinances or zoning policies that can be adapted or amended, or requirements for these types of businesses to remain in compliance and in operation in your city, as well as working with the medical community for understanding what types of contaminants that we've identified, how they impact human health, and what is it that we can do, whether that is with advocating for green infrastructure and planting more trees, or using specific filters and upgrading our homes. There is not a quick fix. There is also not an area in America that is not impacted by some air, soil, or water toxin. This is where we are. But we're looking to reverse that through educating people and making sure that these bad actors are held fully accountable. But it does take time. We did this with Rockford, where we did bring in a medical professional to answer questions. Do you believe that that would be valuable in this instance?
Yep. Yeah. And can you break down the science of this? Since this product is like Carus only chemical, can you break it down scientifically so the doctors know what to look for to help us? Like the chemistry of it?
So we're talking possibly a toxicologist, right? And so I think what we would have to do is find the right medical professional. And it depends also on the audience, whether it is a medical professional to answer the questions that you all have, or working with educating medical professionals within the county to make them aware of some of the environmental contaminants. And this is where I think universities can play a huge role in, again, because ecology and environmental issues seem to be on the outside of a lot of conversations, which is, I'm always shocked when we do asthma-related work with trees while we don't have more medical professionals. It's just like our disciplines have run in parallel, but rarely intersect with how we talk about the environment. But I think that's definitely something we've done in the past. If the community, again, we make the recommendations, but it is on the community to say, yes, we want to move forward with it. This is the person that's going to take the lead, and we work in tandem with you.
I think one thing that I'm curious about is, we are a close-knit community. We might not know everybody's names, we usually see recognized faces at the grocery store, restaurants, in passing, walking. But I know people, I think the employees, there's 90 plus probably on site of that plant. So we all probably know people that work there. And we're not hearing them from Carus, right? That course, hopefully I'll be talking to Mr. Johnson here Wednesday, and we'll get some information on when we could have a meeting to hear more things. But, people that I know that work there talk highly of it. People who've been retired 20, 25 years are welcome back to Christmas parties, picnics in the summer. So I would hope these are people that we know, that we go to church with, that we coexist with in town, who are based off coexist. I would think if they think that something is not legit at that plant, that these people would speak up a little bit. Now, unless you're just not as ignorant to what's going on, then maybe they don't have all the facts. But I don't hear that from people who are at the plant. I'm just talking about my own personal experience.
No, what'd you call that, Bob? That brain training?
These are people who aren't even though affiliated with Carus anymore, where they might talk freely. Now,
You've been brainwashed their whole career.
And it goes back, I'm gonna put you on a spot here a little, Jamie, but now you can handle it, that, hey, well, people are scared for their physical well-being if Jamie's gonna be protesting outside of Carus. And I don't know why that's their thought, but that's somehow they're getting that experience, right? But we need to ask those folks, right? Because I don't think anybody, hopefully intentionally, that's our friends, their face, will know they're dealing with something like, yeah, man, that's some really bad stuff in there. You know what I mean?
I think inviting people to share, and here's the thing, you never know what type of PR and non-disclosures people have been required to sign to be in compliance with their employment. Some people are. Huh?
They might be afraid of losing their jobs.
Absolutely anything. Like I could be retired, but my nephew works there, And me saying something on record, which it isn't uncommon for people to not want to be identified because of, hearsay or just not wanting to get into it. But I do think if there is anyone that's willing to share and answer any questions, that would be valuable. But again, people have different roles. And so the issue might not be at the level that someone has engaged and is employed. It might be in the C-suite or decision making that happens by a manager perhaps, or in a certain sector. So I wouldn't be surprised where some people are like, yep, this is fine and I didn't see anything, whereas somebody else in a different position might have something different to say. This has happened. We are dealing with one issue in Department of Corrections. And there are some people who are like, oh, the problem isn't that big. But then the people closest to the issue have a very different reality. And talking with them, you learn some things that other people wouldn't be able to share. So please do send any names along. Invite them to reach out to us. We don't want to pressure anybody to do or say anything. When people talk to us that are currently employed or affiliated with an entity, we always respect that person's privacy, and we don't kind of out them in blogs and things like that. It's mostly collecting sentiments and getting a kind of holistic approach for, all right, people on the inside are saying this, people on the outside are saying that, this is what the news reports are saying, and what is different versus what's the same. But I do have a question. Is this going to be, is Carus on your agenda every week? Are you all planning to do like a separate kind of working group and just update people on city council? What do you all think the plan is moving forward?
I think the plan is a lot of what the EPA, IEPA does after your letter that we're gonna pass on.
Okay, so you want
obviously my discussion.
I think we're gonna have to do it on a community level, Mila. Community based. I think after a couple, maybe one more meeting, we're gonna probably be done with the city here. They gotta eventually they gotta go on with their business too. But
Yeah, that was my point, is like, would everyone's time be better served if there was a separate working group and the city council was just updated? Because I do know that this is dense, it's heavy, there's other, conversations that you all will be having moving into the summer. And so I don't, just thinking about where this conversation fits moving forward, be more than happy to, give updates for city council.
I think that's a good idea. If the community could, and you guys can figure something out, and then just keep the city in the loop.
Just give us can you assign a city representative to us?
Me and Alderman Thompson talked about having
I think we have
committee
to decide
outside
that
the council here,
there'll be people who want to do that.
where we can be your representative.
Yeah.
We can go two at a time with you, legally. We can't have the whole council outside.
Right. And to Mayor Grove's point,
I think that's a good approach. Yeah.
Isn't the current management just, the generational management at Carus just from 2018? I think, when there was a transition.
I know they had a big turnover.
Yeah, so, so what we're talking about now, the problems, everybody that's a 25, 30, 40-year veteran there, they might have worked under different management with different conditions than what exists now.
But it's always nice when somebody's brave enough to go on and say, hey, I'm Jeff Grove, and these are my personal experiences. But instead of probably just calling in to, newspapers or radio shows or blogs anonymously saying, well, this is how it was, and to me, that doesn't carry any weight. You gotta be willing to stand up for it, put your name to it, and support it, whatever way you're feeling you're supporting.
Well, you know me, I'm not anonymous.
I know. And I respect you for that. Any other discussion tonight, folks? I think as every meeting's going on, I think our discussions seem to be, for me personally, just,
Tiring.
no, I think we're actually getting more understanding, for me personally, because, you know, we're kind of digging into more of the details of it, and it's not just the, you know, what ifs, it's like, these are more actualities, more facts, and I think it took a lot to get this point, just because there's still a lot of unknowns for all of us. So.
We thank you.
I do have a few things I'd like to add.
Sure.
I've been in contact with the chemistry department at IBCC, see if they'd like to take on some air quality testing, and they were not interested. But I did find out some information that there is a community advisory panel meeting coming up in May. And Carus will be there along with PQ Corporation from Marseilles and Epsilon from Peru. And this is a meeting where you can ask questions. They talk about chemical releases permitted by the state of Illinois, OSHA, recordable accidents, and business in general. I think a lot of professors show up, a lot of, you know, might have a state representative there, that type of thing. I couldn't find the exact date, but this is coming up in May, so I figure some people in this room might be interested. Wow. The Community Advisory Panel in a May meeting. I couldn't find anything on Google.
Location or anything?
I don't know.
So we could come to the audience, but not.
I couldn't find a date.
What's that? As an
I'll have that down.
Yeah, well, the professor I spoke with said he usually raises students. So it's an all-day event where there's interaction, people can ask questions, that type of thing. I don't know if it's an open forum situation, I've never been to anything like this, but I thought it would bring it to everyone's attention. As well as we're reworking the library website right now. It's really old and dated. And I think we're gonna try to feature some of this air quality information on there. This is being done through a university, I think in Ohio. I don't know if we can expand that to other air monitors or just use the single one, but I think we're in a good spot to start some long-term data collection.
Right?
Yeah.
Pull this data.
Get a grant from the EPA, because it sounds like the EPA gives out, they've got like $53 million every year that they do for air monitoring.
But I think since we already have a home base started at the library, we can start with this and
Right.
continue with the data collection.
But I didn't realize how helpful that would be, but when Denise put it on there, like, here's the regular, and then here's the explosion, and then here's when Carus quit, you know, when they were offline.
So I
It
think
was all the way down.
I think it would be for my benefit at least to understand this data, because I don't know what I'm looking at when I see these graphs from these air quality monitors. I wrote down 2 email addresses from the Sierra Club here, and maybe I can learn to understand better, and we can push that information on the library website to help everyone understand what it means.
How can you find out for us when that is?
I will continue to look. I think we can all look.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, we can all look up this information. So.
Okay, and you found it where?
I'm communicating with a professor at IBCC.
Okay.
So, like I said, Carus will be there, PQ Corporation and Epsilon from Peru. I don't know if they answer questions, but they will discuss chemical releases, and I think that brings us to what we've been speaking about.
I've been waiting for this too.
So, yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Joe Johnson.
Best mailman too, man.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time tonight.
Sierra Club, Schneider, Lizzie.
Thank you, Mila.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
I'll talk to you.
All right, keep cleaning.
Thank you.